Welcome, everyone. My name is Nancy Ganzikoffer of nancyganzikoffer.com. I'm a life and business coach, and I'm so excited for my latest interview series called From Struggling to Successful. These are amazing stories of women who have overcome adversity to achieve happiness and success. And today I am joined by Pamella Horton. Pamella is a mindset mentor, rapid transformation therapist, and the host of Calling the Real You podcast. So welcome, Pamella.
Thank you, Nancy. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here with us.
So tell us a little bit about what you do today, and then we'll work our way backwards.
Okay. So thank you for having me first and foremost. It's always a pleasure to be able to share time with you and just be able to be of service, right? That's
Yes.
what it's about, sharing and helping people, helping others elevate themselves.
Absolutely.
So what I do today is I actually have multiple businesses, but primarily my practice is a joint venture practice, a mindset practice, and a rapid transformational practice. They all come together really quite beautifully. I have been working in the personal development and professional development industry for over 30 years and studied human behavior, positive psychology, neuroscience, and actually started my career off as a social worker. And so all of that skill set that I learned and really had dove deeply into is what I really bring to the table through Maven's Connections, which is actually our company. Joint ventures, and when I say our company, I actually do that with my husband, Eric Horton. He's my business partner and obviously
Nice.
my husband. Yes. So we service, we help people who have a message, who might be authors that are in the personal and professional space regarding peak performance, etc. It's our world. We live, eat, breathe, sleep in it. And we help them elevate their businesses through joint ventures. And joint ventures, for me personally, is creating a relationship that normally would never make any sense. And the perfect example that I can give you is if you're a fan of Dancing with the Stars or mixed martial arts, MMA, or Ultimate Fighting Championship, you would never ever think that the two would go together.
Right.
I think it was last season where they had a very young fighter. I think she was ranked 10 in the world for MMA. Beautiful girl, very talented. And they had her go and be featured on Dancing with the Stars. And that created a beautiful marriage between the two industries. And so I think out of the box, and those are the types of relationships that we bring to the table for our clients and our partners. That's the joint venture side.
Okay. And how do clients find you for the joint ventures?
Word of mouth. Our entire practice for the last 4 years has been word of mouth. We have a website that, quite frankly, Eric's been asking me, I need some language so we can update it, because we've shifted from just the traditional joint venture mailing partners to really broadening out, going mainstream, and creating very unique ways so that people can grow their lists and their business and elevate the world with their message. And so the website doesn't even properly reflect exactly what it is that we do, and I'm okay with that. I think that's why I haven't given them anything new yet to update the site.
You know what? If you're getting enough business, then what you're doing is working. And I see you're sitting in the outdoors. So I'm from New York right now. They're having a terrible snowstorm, 10 to 15 inches, but I'm right now in Seattle, Washington, and we're having terrible rain. Where are you with such beautiful weather?
We are in Florida, the West Coast, also known as the Sun Coast. When I didn't grow up here. We actually relocated from Connecticut, so I know that they're getting hammered right now, and with the snow and the thunderstorms. But we moved down here 3 years ago because we always wanted to be in a warmer subtropical climate, and this is where we landed so far, knowing that we can work and travel anywhere in the world.
It's a beautiful thing. So yeah. I know, because we had a conversation, brief, because I like to keep my interviews kind of fresh, that you have had quite the struggle in your lifetime, and to get to where you are today, has been a journey. So I'd love to have our listeners hear your story, and then I'll probe a little bit on how others can learn from what you've been through and what you've achieved.
Thank you. It's true. We all have adversities. The purpose of the adversities, my belief is that it's to show us what we don't want in our lives, so that we can go ahead and seek out and correct our mindset and change our habits and our beliefs to achieve what it is that we do want.
That's a nice way of looking at it.
Thank you. That's actually
Yes.
the bigger part of our business too. When we work with our clients, whether the joint venture clients or other clients in terms of mindset and peak performance, that's the adversity work where I learned where I didn't want to be and found where I wanted to be and then actually achieved it. That's what I help others do. So I grew up in New England, Connecticut, as I mentioned, and typical blue collar family. Slightly dysfunctional, and I say that with all the love and respect in the
Yes.
world. But by the time I was 7 years of age, I actually witnessed and experienced horrific domestic violence and experienced 4 significant deaths, including my father and my brother. So you can imagine in that short period of time, I really learned how to be the most perfect people pleaser, the most perfect perfectionist, overachiever, workaholic, and wanted to just keep going, doing, and stay busy so that I could keep my chatter, my mind chatter, and my inner critic at bay.
Yes.
Because I was really my own worst enemy versus my own best friend. And I knew that at a young age, and I would look out at my family, and I love them dearly. And this isn't to badmouth or anything. Let me just say this, as a social worker, why I went into social worker was as a result of that. I worked with affluent families. I worked for the government and was stationed in really affluent communities. And no matter what your economic scale is or where you're at, there is abuse everywhere and there is ugliness everywhere, quite
Definitely.
frankly. And I just want to preface that, like some of the clients that I had, they had the most gorgeous mansions, but their homes were empty. Their children were sleeping on mattress boxes and were abandoned. So this type of stuff happens, and we're addicted to prescription drugs, etc. So having said all of that, I learned really well and quite early how to protect myself. And then after a certain period of time in my early 30s, between 30 and 33, simultaneously, I was working full-time as a social worker. I was a single mom because I successfully married someone who was exactly like my biological father, who was an alcoholic and who was abusive. So I had to relive that pattern, right, to know what I didn't want and experience it for myself. But the ages between 30 and 33, Nancy, simultaneously, as I mentioned, working full-time as a social worker, I was a single mom. I owned, and operated my own 5-treatment room wellness center and spa.
Wow.
Then attended graduate school and graduated from a graduate school at the same time. And I just, again, was going nonstop and became really ill, became really overweight, became really unhappy.
I would not have known. We did not talk about that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was really, well, for me, I'm a short woman. I'm only 5 feet tall, and I was a size 16, and I was thick. I was thick. And my idea at that time of exercise was massage. I just didn't have healthy habits. And in our habit, once we create our habits, and then our habits create us. And once I began to understand that, where I was at in that point in my life where something needed to give, and what gave was everything except my awareness that I was the one that was unconsciously creating my experiences based on being on autopilot, based on the thoughts, limiting beliefs, and habits that were given to me and that I accepted as my own and were operating from. And so it was that time frame where I just kind of hit rock bottom and met my husband, and together we really just started working on ourselves individually and started studying and went back to school again and changed our lives completely.
Did you have one? It's an amazing story, and I have so many questions in my head. Was there one, as Oprah would say, one aha moment, or was it sort of a slow progression?
First of all, I always knew whoever's listening or watching to this, you know what needs to be done. It's whether or not you are allowing yourself to feel okay with it, forgive yourself and whoever else is involved to actually move forward. But you know what needs to be done. And I always knew deep down what I needed to do. And there were actually 2 things. Okay. And let me also say this to everyone. I don't usually like to talk about the past. I don't want to stay and reside that, because the vibration that is that, I don't want to just to go it out, to send it out. Having said that, it is good to know where you come from, because then you can make those changes. So the first defining moment was I have a daughter. She's now 19. She is from my first marriage, my first husband. And at 3 years, I was in CVS with my husband and my daughter. And I was walking down the aisle, and I can't remember if I had said something or I'd asked a question. And you never knew when you're with somebody who is a abuses substances, they are predictably unpredictable. And so you never know when the shoe is going to drop, or and when they have the abusive tendencies, you just never know when it's going to hit.
It's true.
And so in the store, I had asked something, and he just lit into me, not physically at that time, but verbally and loudly. And my daughter was 3 at the time, possibly 2.5. And we got out of the store. I was mortified because, get this, okay, at that time I was a social worker, and I was working with adolescents, families, and children to help them through their own family dynamics. So here I am experiencing this trauma and trying to help others, which I was successful at, but I couldn't do it for myself because I wasn't able to change my mindset. So we got into the car, and I sat in the back seat trying to build distance between myself and my first husband. And my daughter looked at me and said to me, when are you going to stop this? He's so mean to you. When are we going to just leave? And there was never, and I never bad talked or whatever, talked poorly about him at all in front of her ever, even after the divorce. So when she looked at me and asked that question, I said, if she's aware, I need to do something. I need to be a better role model. And,
right, because what are you teaching her by letting her see you allowing yourself to be treated that way?
Exactly. And that was a very big defining moment. And that was the snowball effect. And did I share this with you when we first spoke about the police station? Is this the story that I shared with you?
No, you did share the story of your daughter in less detail with me. That was one of your moments, but I didn't hear the police station story.
It was about, so this was the second defining moment of just sheer embarrassment and at that time horror, if you will. One of the times that he decided that he was going to go off the rails, so to speak, and go ahead and hit me, we both ended up going to the police station, and they had changed the laws, thankfully, to help protect people in domestic violence. And here I am in the station. I wasn't arrested. Unfortunately, he was. Unfortunately, because it was the final break.
I was going to say, fortunately, in my eyes, but
yeah,
right from the outside.
Right. Here I am in the station, and I'm amongst my colleagues because I worked with the youth officers. At that time, I was the director of a multidisciplinary investigation team that viewed cases of abuse, both sexual and physical. And so here I am face to face with my colleagues, experiencing what I was helping others prevent or escape, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And that was that was the moment. And it was a big moment because I kept resisting the universal, 2x4s. And that was the biggest universal 2x4 that I had to change my life.
But it's an amazing story because I'm always teaching people and struggle with it myself. I think you taught me, you teach what you are trying to learn yourself.
Yes.
Yes. Or what you've learned from your own struggles.
Yep.
And it's amazing to me how we all start out hiding who we really are and what our lives are really like and the struggles. And I tend to be a transparent person, but I still struggle sometimes with the new things that come into my life. It's like, oh, should I be telling people that? But the minute you start sharing, you tend to attract a support group and learn from them. And that must have been so hard for you, though, to face it that way. It wasn't on your terms.
It wasn't, and it was difficult. However, they were wonderful, and they were gracious, and they were supportive, and it really made the transition much easier. And it gave me it helped me find my own fortitude and stand in my power at that time with regards to that. The fear stuck with me, though, for years after, even when I met my husband now. you know, when we first met, Nancy, I mean, I was living in my home. I was a professional. I was a single mom doing all of those things that I had shared with you earlier simultaneously. And yet the shades were drawn in my home. Every time I heard a loud car drive by or noise or whatever, I would, you know, peek around the corner, make sure that it wasn't him stalking or just threatening me. There's a lot of fear that goes with it. It's the post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
And so that was a lot of stuff that I had to work through.
Pamela, how old were you when that happened?
30, I think.
30. Okay.
And then, so between 30 and 33. And then after when Eric and I started, again, just changing our lives and doing this work, the inner work is what I call it, and calling the real you, that's where calling the real you came from, probably around 33, 34.
That's fantastic that you were able to meet somebody that also wanted to do the self-work and grow with you, because I think that's really hard. A lot of people are very stuck with I am who I am and accept me that way, or don't accept me at all. And it's hard to find someone who's on the same mindset as you and wanting to improve and grow and learn as a lifelong premise, really, for just constant growth. And it sounds like you have that with him.
I do. I'm very lucky, very blessed, as he is, and
yes.
And I'll just own that. And but yeah, I really am, and I have to share with you, whoever's listening, to attract Eric, what I did, and it took about 5 years actually. I drew a circle on a paper and literally wrote inside the circle every quality that I wanted in my partner, because it wasn't who I was currently with, that I knew that wasn't going to change.
Right.
And at that time, and I put every quality that I wanted, and I said, you know, in divine time, may he appear in my life, meaning when I'm ready to accept him. And I think it was like 5 years later, 5 years, I was single and didn't date. I didn't want to bring anyone in home.
I was going to ask you, did you go on the dating sites or anything, or ask people to connect you? You just lived your life and kept it open.
Yep, stayed focused. And it's a funny story. That's another interview.
Give us a little tidbit.
We weren't. I went to a wedding, and I never really socialized. I didn't socialize. I was all business. I just, again, was running away from my current life situation by being super busy. And I had gone to a wedding, and I didn't want to go home. I was having such a good time. So I called up my neighbor and said, I don't know where to go. Where can we go to have a drink? And so we went to have a drink, and he's across there, and he was with his buddy. He was supposed to be elsewhere, but where they went closed down for the day or whatever, and he ended up at the same sports bar, a bar, of course. And I looked over and I waved to him, and that was it. He came around and we talked for days and weeks afterwards, and
that's
became friends first and fell in love.
Oh, I love that story. And how long did you date before you married?
3 years.
Okay.
Yep.
And your daughter's how old now?
19.
Wow.
He actually adopted Serena. Eric adopted Serena when she was 7.
How fabulous is that?
It was really quite interesting because it all happened on her birthday without any planning. Like, that was the date the court set and everything. Was
how
her
nice.
Her birth certificate and him as her father.
That's awesome. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. A little off course there. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll come back. So one of the things you said was kind of like being your own best friend. How did you, and you talked a little bit about habits, and I want to go back to that because people, you're right, people know what they have to do to change. And they just don't want to, because we go back to our comfort zone and what we're used to doing as our daily habits, or the way we respond to people. How did you gain awareness to actually start changing, or what tools did you use to change your habits? And then how long until you really felt like I'm there?
So I want to say that my entire life, and probably because of the way that my family was at that time. Are you familiar with Leo Bruscaglia?
No.
He's an Italian author, but his subject was love. And, you know, I was 5, 6, 7 years of age, and I was asking to have his books. I wanted to read his books, and I watched him on PBS. You know, most kids watch Sesame Street. I was watching him give presentations to colleges and things of that nature. And so I was always all about wanting to be better and wanting to be happy and not worry and quiet that voice in my head and in my heart at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And just try to help others. And so it's not anyone's fault, right, that they can't change a habit. The mind, the sole purpose of our mind is to keep us safe and alive. And it does that through repetition, and it does that through remaining in our groups, our family members, and familiarity. That's how we survive, is through familiarity. So even if I grew up in an abusive household, I married someone who was an abuser, that was very familiar to me. I knew it was insane. I knew it wasn't right. I knew it didn't feel good. I knew it wasn't what I wanted, but it was very familiar. And so we do things that are familiar.
Right.
And our job, my personal belief is our individual responsibilities and jobs are to figure out what is familiar that is not serving us and not working and even in fact harming us.
Yes.
And make that unfamiliar while replacing what is unfamiliar: loving relationships, loving language, success, health, whatever that is, which is not familiar to you at that moment because you're either overweight or not exercising or in an abusive relationship or not working at a career that you want, whatever that is, is to make all of that familiar because it's unfamiliar. So, and you do that through a process of finding the rapid transformational therapy. The work that we do is we find the core belief, the core reason why someone created a coping mechanism for themselves, the core reason why something is familiar to them that they keep going over and over and over again and reliving over and over again. And once we find that core reason, they are then able to understand why they created it in the first place, to survive or to keep going or to survive in that group that's familiar to them. Making sense?
Yes, yes.
So when you identify the why and have a solid understanding, that's powerful. That is power. And when you have that understanding, you can then release those habits or the thought patterns that were keeping you stationary, hindering you, holding you back, helping you be your worst enemy. And then you are able to receive or create and establish those new habits, those new thinking patterns to have you be your own best friend and have the success, the happiness, the health that you're looking for.
So the recognition is the first step.
Yes.
And that has got to be incredibly hard work for some people. I would think for most people, honestly.
It's hard for all of us.
Yeah.
Because we want to continuously to go back to what's familiar. If you take a look at even the show The Biggest Loser, for example, they have this beautiful training, they have everything done for them, and a good majority continue to have success in that because they've established those patterns and they're really happy. But some of those folks actually revert back because their mind, they haven't really anchored in those new habits and beliefs. And there's a process that's a process of the positive psychology that I mentioned earlier, the neuroscience that I mentioned earlier, and if those habits or those thoughts are not anchored in, then you're more likely to go back to the things that were familiar to you that can be harmful.
So if you were to give 2 or 3 tips on how, if you've done the internal work and know why you're going back to your comfort zone, to your habit, to what's making you unhappy, quite frankly, but what are 2 or 3 things that someone can do to change that once they have gotten the enlightenment as to why they're doing it?
So actually, a couple of things, Nancy. That's a great question, and I want to thank you and everyone who's listening. Thank Nancy for asking that because it's going to help you, okay? First of all, if you think that you can do it on your own, it's going to take much longer and it's going to be more painful experience. And it's going to feel like a little bit of insanity because you're still doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And it's just not going to happen. So I really actually recommend that you find somebody that has some sort of specialty in the positive psychology, the neuroscience, coaching, mindset, mentorship, whoever that is that you are comfortable with, because it has to be a good match, like a good pair of jeans, right?
Yes.
Whoever you work with has to be a fit.
Right.
So don't try to do it on your own. Really find an expert to help you so that they can be your cheerleader too. We need that. especially if you alone are the one that's making those changes for yourself and no one else around you in your environment is. The second thing I want to offer up is to begin to pay attention to your facial expressions and your body language. How is it that you are postured? What is your facial expression? What are your facial expressions doing? These are really great insights as to what your state of mind is. And you can begin to ask, once you figure out what your body language and body posture is and what your facial expressions are, you can begin to ask questions. Why am I standing like
Yes.
Why am I standing like this? Why am I like this? And when you ask those questions, the answers are going to come to you, and that'll fortify the understanding that you've already done the work, or that the work that you're about to do.
So it's what you're feeling when you start to notice you might be slouching or looking down or looking away or not participating. I always call it their enthusiasm for the moment that they're in. If there's a real lack of enthusiasm, what's going on in their brain that's causing that?
Right. What is the internal dialogue? What is that? What is the speech that you're using? What's the language? Because that's a whole other subset of the mindset work. Mm-hmm. So yes, to your point, yes. So pay attention. How is it that are you standing in your power? Are you sitting strong? What is it?
I feel like adjusting my seat right now. I'm thinking, am I sitting right?
There is no right or wrong. They're all just cues, right? And that's the beautiful thing about our body. And that's why it's so important to have the mindset so that you can have a healthy body, because it really is your biggest messenger as to what your mindset is. And then if I could offer 3 steps, right, to help people. So to your point about the recognizing or recognition or acknowledging, I invite people to relax in any given situation that's causing them angst, fear, worry, upset, whatever the case may be. Relax in that moment, because our first inclination is to restrict, shut down, clamp up, freak out even further, get angry, bitter, or whatever the case may be. Yes. And it's counterintuitive. So when we relax in the situation that's not favorable or that we're not liking in that moment or that's scary, and we relax, we're opening up and we're creating that space for ourselves versus being restricted. And if you can think of a hose, for example, that is stretched out and has water flowing to it, and the water's going to its destination where it wants to go, right? So no different from someone who's where they're at and wants to be someplace else or wants to achieve something else. If you crank up that hose, it's going to stop the flow. So if you're restricting yourself and resisting, you're not relaxed, and you're going to restrict anything that's all the goodness that is really right there waiting to be delivered to you. And what we resist persists, right?
What we resist persists. Yeah, that's actually fabulous. I'm going to use that on my Instagram and give you credit for that. That's actually really key. Like I say it a little different, but I feel like you've given more detail to it. I always say, don't react. Breathe, think, stay quiet, and then respond.
Yeah.
And that relaxing your physical self is great advice.
Yeah.
Because if you take those breaths, I don't know, do you meditate?
Yeah, that's the other part of the practice that we've really dove into and has helped tremendously.
Because I feel like people shut down with the word meditation, even me, because I'm like you. I work, and once in a while I have to go, let me just breathe, relax, be quiet, even if it's a minute or two. Mm-hmm. And now I find that I can do it when I'm in a stressful situation. I can go within myself and do that breathing and reconnect with myself and relax
100%.
When I'm in a stressful situation. But it's a muscle that you have to exercise.
100%. You're absolutely right, Nancy. And to go along with that, the resistance, what we resist persists, and the relaxing, there's actually, it's 3 steps that I offer up to people: relax, release, and receive. And when you are able to relax, as I just had explained and what you just identified as well so beautifully, the next step to that process is, okay, you acknowledge where you're at, you acknowledge that, you were freaking out or you want to freak out or whatever the case may be.
Right.
But then you are able to release, because you're relaxed, you're more open now, you're able to release any kind of judgment, assumption, conclusion, story, attachment to the outcome that you want, and the judgments that you're having about the situation that you're experiencing in that moment. Right. When you release those things, you're also releasing the negative self-talk and the self-sabotage talk as well. and you're just being in that moment with the releasing, release it all. And when you release it all, that what's happening is you're creating space both in your mind and in your body, creating a container for yourself to be able to receive. And when you let go, you're creating that space to receive the very thing that you are wanting. And I'll give you an example if I could.
Yes, I was going to ask you for an example because it sounds hard to do. So because my mind immediately went to, if you're in a disagreement with somebody and you want to make your point. That doesn't mean you want to be right. You just want to make your point, and you're getting agitated. So you're going to relax and release. Then how do you?
What usually so the example, let me answer to your point. What usually happens is when you've connected that way with your inner core you, the real you, because that's really what's happening when you relax, release, and then ultimately receive, you start to view the situation from that 30,000 foot view level. You're not in it. The energy isn't there. You literally sucked the energy out of that negative situation because you are present in that moment through the relax and the releasing. The example I want to share is when I was part of corporate, there was a woman that just did not click. We clashed, we didn't click. Had a really hard time with her. I would come home complaining. I just didn't like it. Didn't like her. Right? I just didn't like her. And so I had to go within even deeper to figure out why, because everyone is a mirror of us. So what was it about her that was a reflection of me that I really need? It was a cue. It was the universe going, hey, you need to work on something here. What is it inside of her? And what is it, her behavior that's triggering you? And so I turned it around and I was able to relax and release and had to do that process. But through those two exercises, what ended up happening was I found myself blessing her. Literally blessing her. Every time I was getting agitated, I was blessing her and showering her with just positive light and energy and thoughts and love, even when I didn't want to. Like, it was to the point where I bless you. But what ended up happening as soon as I started doing that, my whole energy, my whole outlook on her literally changed. And within 2 weeks' time, the universe delivered her from that position, and she went to go work for another company. So I actually didn't have to work with her ever again. And that's what I mean by releasing. When you do the inner work, you do receive what you want. And you mentioned working. I have more work-life balance than I ever have. I'm the healthiest I've ever been. I have an abundance of opportunities, and it's because of these practices and the work that I've done on myself. And now I share it with others.
That's fantastic. How many years did it take you to build your business once you got in touch with what you really wanted to do? Because I think there's a misconception that you get in touch with what you're meant to do and what you'd like to do and have your work-life balance, and that's just going to happen overnight.
No, it doesn't.
And it doesn't. And it doesn't. Anyone who thinks they're going to have, six figures from 0 to 6 figures in 6 months, I always say, there's a lot of work to do in achieving that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Nancy. It's I'm going to say about 6 years.
Yeah.
It wasn't an overnight success at all, and it took a lot of it took a lot of reorganizing and restructuring. And you would try one thing and you would realize that's not the direction that you want to do. But I'm going to take these pieces and I'm going to apply it to where I'm being pulled and drawn to, and what excites me, and just keep following that what excites you. And if I could also just offer up, Nancy, that advice from other people is wonderful. But I encourage you to not get distracted by the latest process of doing something.
Right.
Trust your own self. If you're being guided to make a phone call to somebody and you don't know why, trust it anyways and make the phone call and see what happens. And that's in large part is how I've actually built the business, is through my intuition and just listening to what I was inspired to do and watching it unfold. And so
I love that. That's very similar to me. I feel like and I told you a little bit about my history. I own two businesses, and one is as I'm an art consultant. I started that business by selling my mother's artwork, sticky tacking it to friends' walls and selling it at home art parties. And there was so many skeptics, like, what are you doing? You just worked 18 hours and you made $30. But one day, an interior designer, I was like, I know I'm onto something. And I said, I kept throwing spaghetti against the wall and just trying new things and taking opportunities and saying yes to many different things until I finally found what I loved to do. And that's what I tell all my clients. It's not, I spoke to a coach once that said, no, you need to figure out what you're doing, and then everything you do has to go towards that. And I'm like, well, I'm kind of like throwing, sticky tacking my mother's artwork again on the wall and finding where I can best serve people. So the process of 3 to 6 years is, to me, very normal for you to truly achieve your comfort zone where you're helping people in the way you want to help them, having the life balance, achieving financial success, whatever that means to you. And I hear that in you, that you followed your intuition and your gut, and you try things and you readjust your path if you have to.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the mindset, when you figure out what your core blocks, I'll give an example of the financial blocks too in that time frame, because you are blocking yourself from receiving the abundance that you want or deserve. I had a block regarding money that I thought that if I asked for money for services for myself, that other people would perceive me as greedy. And I had to actually I had to work through that, right? I had to own it, acknowledge it, think of that's insane, because if people aren't paying you, there's karmic debt that goes along with that. If you're giving yourself free, which is fine, if you're doing, if you want to do that in portions and however, I'm not telling you not to donate your services.
Well, no, like this interview, this is you're giving solid tips and content that's going to help the listeners get past their own blocks or maybe see their life a little differently. And you're not getting paid for this. I'm not getting paid for this. We're releasing this for free, hoping to help people.
Right.
So, but you're right. I think a lot of, for me, particularly females, because I work with mostly women, have trouble charging for their worth if it's not a physical product.
Yeah.
It's intellectual property. It's what they're good at.
It's you. The example that you just provided, you are the gift, and you are a piece of this universal puzzle that nobody else can fit into that piece. And we need you, and we need you to show up in a way that doesn't put you further in debt, spiritual bankruptcy, that kind of brokenness, and to be able to charge what it is that you're worth. You don't have to charge, you don't have to start off charging $1,000 or $5,000 an hour or whatever. You can build yourself up, build that familiarity, practice it, get used to saying it out loud, and let it feel good to you and be able to receive it.
Absolutely. It's that building the confidence. People finding their own confidence in their talents and what they offer to the world and to their clients. It's very hard for them to feel worthy and put a dollar amount on that. But I think, like you're saying, doing that inner work is so key.
It's the difference between, I once heard, actually just a couple of weeks ago, this was a beautiful statement. We are all born extraordinary, but we are programmed to be ordinary. Just think about that for a minute. We are all born extraordinary, but yet we are programmed to be ordinary. And that is through other people's fears, other people's habits, other people's beliefs that are we inherit. And then we continue to operate because we don't understand that we're not awake to that. Martin Luther King says, the truth will set you free. When you understand the truth as to why you're operating a certain way, you will become free. You will access your own freedom. And when another favorite quote of mine is by Harriet Tubman. When I freed thousands of slaves. I could have freed thousands more if they only knew that they were slaves. So the inner work, the understanding that you are operating because of how you were taught to operate from a certain mindset, and to be able to work through that is priceless.
It
And
is
they need
priceless.
you to do that.
It is priceless. Great advice, Pamela. I'm always wanting, again, women, because that's who I serve, to be seen for who they are, to
Yeah.
really get to know who they are and not to be afraid to be seen.
Yeah.
Because of those people who want to keep you in the box of what they think is normal and what you should do, and what you shouldn't do. So,
Mm-hmm.
taking risks and putting yourself out there once you've done that inner work is so key.
Absolutely.
It's been fabulous having you here.
Thank you. It's been fabulous being with you.
I am so grateful that you shared your story with me and our listeners, because it is hard. I'm like you, I don't like to dwell or repeat the past and the difficulties, but you sharing it today has helped, hopefully, a ton of people. Showing where you've been and where you've come, and that it's possible with the inner work and the hard work and the positivity, and getting somebody who can help you through it, and a great support system that you now have too, which is fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm going to let everyone know how to find you by giving them a link under this interview, but why don't you tell everyone how they can find you, so if they want to work with you, they can get to you.
Yeah, thank you. I would love to get to know you, whoever's listening, and if you have questions. So there's a couple of ways that you can find me. One is callingtherealYOU.com, which is related to my blog and things of that nature. But you're welcome to email me directly at mavensconnections.com@gmail.com. So that's Mavens, Mavens, at connections. at gmail.com, or even Facebook. Come find me on Facebook, and that's Pamela with 2 L's, Pamella Horton. And I also have Calling the Real You Facebook page as well. You're welcome to join me there.
Pamela, thank you so much. I look forward to working with you again in the future, because I know we both are into the Mind PT, which we didn't talk about, but they'll see it on our websites, I'm sure, as a way to positively prime your mind, and do the hard work it takes to get to your goals and your dreams. So I will talk to you again soon, and I'll say goodbye to my listeners right now. Again, I'm Nancy Ganzekaufer, nancyganzekaufer.com. I hope you enjoyed this interview. I know I did.
I did too.
And everyone enjoy the rest of your day. Bye. Bye, Pamela.
Bye.